Vision Radio.
It reminded me of Independence Day, a huge saucer and low flying and no sound again. I couldn't tell if there was a glimmer or a light. I think there was along the perimeter. It was a faster experience though, so I probably only saw it for 3 or 4 seconds. It was still long enough to be like, oh my, I know what I'm looking at right now.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome Ben on with me. And Ben reached out and he said, I have a couple of very interesting, as you say, up close and personal UFO experiences. So this will be a UFO-centric episode, which I'm very excited about. Ben, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, is it okay to say, and you don't have to say exactly where these happened, where you live and all that, because I know at least one of these is, I think, where you live now, but you could say the state if you want to, or you can omit that as well.
Sure. Yeah. Both of these have happened in Colorado. I was in the Front Range location on the first one and in Western Colorado for the second one.
Excellent. Front Range and Western. Well, yeah, let's start with that very first one, because both of these are, yeah, they're UFOs, they're unidentified flying objects, but they're both very, very different in what they looked like, right?
Yes. Yeah, so the first one, I was in the Front Range, getting off of work from northern Colorado, kind of heading back down on 287. A lot of people are aware of where 287 is, and I was coming to a stoplight and going really slow because I was about ready to take a left-hand turn. And just, it was a nice day, had my windows down, completely sober, obviously driving from work. So looking out my window, I saw a large craft that looked like it was a triangle. I almost always say pyramid, but pyramid isn't necessarily the shape. It was more of a triangle. And it was massive, the size of a football field or larger. And I was looking out my window at it, just kind of hovering, not moving very fast on my left-hand side. I was about ready to take the left turn, but it was a red light. And I came to a full stop and I was looking at this, and I put down both my windows, and I had a skylight or a moonroof, and I opened that as well, kind of all at the same time, just touching buttons because I was like, what is this? And I was at a complete stop. And I got a honk behind me because I guess the turn light had turned green, which I wasn't paying attention to because my eyes were just fixed on this object. I would say only about 4, 5, 6 seconds. I was looking at this as it was heading back towards the city, kind of in the direction I was traveling, south. And by the time I took the arrow, because I saw it was green, I looked down and saw that I had almost missed the light. It was turning yellow, and I hurried through and then pulled over on the right-hand side of the lane with my flashers on and got out, and I didn't see anything at all. So it was just hovering what looked to be a few hundred feet, or I don't even know how to guesstimate how high it was up in the sky, but it looked to be very close to the ground. And this area is kind of known for government aircraft operations. There's Ball Aerospace, and there's a couple other aeronautical. My brother-in-law is actually an aeronautical engineer. He can't really talk about much, but I get to talk to him sometimes at Thanksgiving and ask him questions as far as what kind of stuff they work on in the government. The only thing that he's told me is that they're decades ahead of what we know as the population. So we don't even know what kind of technology they have. But going back to the craft that I saw, large black triangular craft, no lights on it at all. and no humming, no sound at all. I've heard other people's stories saying that they've seen some triangular crafts, sometimes with lights and sometimes with not. This had no lights on it. The only reason I could see it was it had just gotten dark. It was nighttime. The sun had just gone down, but all of the stars were popping out so bright in the black sky behind. You could see the stars around this craft and not in like through the craft. It was something there blocking the actual stars of the sky. Completely mind blowing. I was I was kind of in shock. I kind of came to, had to slap myself a little bit and like, what did I just see? I have no idea. I have no idea what I just saw.
When it's
So that was
frustrating that the people, especially the ones that are honking at you right behind, you're like, you don't see this. Like, look what's going on out here, right?
forward. Like, you don't see the traffic lights. Like, I'm not looking at the traffic light right now. And no one else pulled up behind me with flashers. I was waiting to see if someone was like, oh my word, did you see that? Like, nothing. I was apparently the only one that saw it, or maybe someone else saw it while they were driving down the highway, going straight through the light when I was taking that left. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, gut feeling, do you think, especially with what your brother does and what he has said, do you think then that that's something that we created, or that was something off planet?
I do. One out of the two of the stories that I have, that one, I actually think that it was probably a military craft of some kind. I think that we have reverse engineered. I studied Bob Lazar for a while when I was curious after listening to Bill Cooper and Phil Schneider. I was
Mm-hmm.
a big Phil Schneider fan and just listened to hours of his military whistleblower stuff, for lack of a better kind of term. I think he was a true whistleblower. Mostly people kind of dismissed him, but I was like, he's being too genuine and authentic and just spitting out some of these facts that I always thought Phil Schneider was telling the truth. So I started looking at Bob Lazar, and then this was 10, 15 years ago, and I think Bob Lazar was telling the truth too. They said that they were reverse engineer some of these crafts that had fallen. Mostly he was talking about the discs, I guess, what we would call a saucer types of engineering. But who knows what kinds of other shape crafts they have. I think for the shape of this thing, it didn't seem like alien craft to me. It seemed like something government. And being in that area too, I was like, well, NORAD and Cheyenne Mountain, which I'm familiar with. I lived down in Colorado Springs. My dad had a house down there for a short time, and I was used to hearing stories come out of what they have under the ground here at Cheyenne Mountain. And this is a couple hours north of there where I spotted this, but I know that some kinds of military operations do happen along the Front Range. So that's why I think it's probably government or military over alien on that one.
Did you see any seams or rivets on it at all? Any bolts or anything?
No, it just looked like one shape, one solid shape. And it was almost like a matte black, not gray, but it didn't blend in with the sky behind it. The sky behind, since it was nighttime, was actually sharper and more black than this craft was. So it could be kind of, I guess, grayish, but it was more of like a black craft that was like a matte black kind of to me. And I have always loved the matte black look, kind of like new asphalt being laid when it doesn't have the shine or sheer
Mm.
to it. Kind of a matte black. That's what it looked like, but no lights and no sounds at all. Just hovering and then disappeared. By the time I took the light, I couldn't even see it anymore. So I was like, I wonder if it sped off, because I would think it would get smaller and smaller, kind of like watching an airplane. It didn't do that. It was like there for 5 seconds and then it was gone.
What a cool sighting, though. Like, whether it's
But
ours or not, very cool sighting. Did you? This is 2014, of course. I would imagine. I mean, at that point, there would be at least some probably online forums and things. Yes.
yeah,
Was there anything that you saw even years later online, or any kind of a news report and newspaper that other people had seen this?
yes. So there were only two different. I did log it on something for MUFON. I think it was an early MUFON site, just saying I saw this large triangular craft in the sky. I was the only one on that thread forum at that time that listed that. But in the local paper, a very small paper that probably only goes out to, I don't know, 10 or 20,000 people, an older gentleman, because he said his name. I can't remember if he was in his 60s or 70s, but he said he was retired and he was at home and he was out back at night and he saw a triangular craft fly right over town.
Wow.
And I was Oh, weird. Because I didn't do a ton of like on the ground, I guess, research, but I was like, I wonder if this has been spotted by anyone else and if anyone reported it in that local paper that I picked up. It was a few days later. Someone had reported it in the local paper. So I was like, wow, okay, someone else saw it.
That is so cool. I mean, even if
Yeah,
it's just you two actually taking the time to report it, then that means that it was probably seen by so many other folks. And they're just like, well, I'm not going to report that and look like a kook, you know?
sure. Yep.
So,
I didn't know tell at that time either. I was like, I guess maybe online I can put something in here with some details, but
right.
very few details.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you happen to know because I know that for BFRO, I haven't looked at MUFON in so long, like a case number or,
I don't. I think a few years ago, after I was still looking into the skies and kind of interested in this, I went online and tried to find it and I couldn't find it anywhere. But I know that it was uploaded at that time. I remember, I think even with my old iPhone, I took a picture of it after I put it online just to come back to, and I no longer have that phone, but it has to be out there somewhere. I'm not sure if it would be in old MUFON files, if they still have a database for something like that. I'm not sure.
right. Because like I said, I actually should have, I should be on MUFON more just because of what I do. I don't even know if they, like if they take your report and then they marry it because of the time frame with the older gentleman's report, like link it below yours and vice versa. I don't know that
Sure.
they do that. Of course, that would take an incredible amount of time because some reports don't come until years later. So that's a lot for places that a lot of times these are volunteers, going through these reports and collating the reports and putting them on websites. But maybe that's something that the dreaded AI could do someday, right? Like come through all the databases and then put everything, all the data points together for one sighting would be amazing. But I'll have to look for that. That is so cool.
I get time because now I'm interested. Like it has to be
Yeah.
hidden somewhere. Maybe I can actually find a link to that, and I would share
Yeah.
that for sure.
It's cool that you did that though, Ben, because a lot of people they just don't. And I think maybe a lot of people just go, look at that. That's kind of weird. I mean, even though it's probably ours, which I do agree with, I think a lot or most of what is seen in the sky is ours. As you say, though, where did the initial design come from? Or some of the technology, if that's what we're calling it, or harnessing elements, as it were, from Bob Lazar. Like, where did that come from? So I find
That's
that fascinating.
fascinating for sure. Bob Lazar would talk about some of these metals that we don't normally engineer, and
Yeah.
they are available. They can actually be used. They know the science behind them, I guess. A periodic table of elements, things that are not even listed, that most population doesn't even know about, but they're using some of these metals, which they say, can burn. I think Phil Schneider was the one who brought in these pieces from a craft, and he said a million degrees Fahrenheit will not burn this metal. And people are like, "What? What does that even mean?" It's
Yeah.
it's a can't even comprehend like what that even means. But some of these metals that they use are apparently very strong, durable, and fireproof, and all of these things that don't make sense with our normal physics. Obviously, I'm not much of a science guy, but I know that Bob Lazar had talked to spoke about some of the science, and same with Phil Schneider, and it always blew my mind. Like, what? There's things on the periodic table that we don't even know about, but they know about. That's strange to me.
Yeah. And gee, why would they want to keep that a secret? Let's see, How weird. Now, you don't have to answer this. And I'm not trying to poke and pry. You just go, nah, let's just go to my second encounter. But last question for this, and it's just more of a general one. Has your brother in law at one of these dinners or whenever, have you ever said, oh, have you ever, do you think aliens are real? Like, do you think there are off planet anything out there? Have you ever asked him that? And has he ever gone, well, maybe, but I can't talk about that?
I never have. I've asked him certain types of questions about capabilities and what these crafts can do, more about speed. We've talked about
Mm,
Mach before. and what Mach 2, Mach 3 would be. I've even mentioned, because of Phil Schneider, underground maglev trains, they say. They hover on top of the rail. They don't actually make contact with it. But some of these trains can apparently go Mach 2 or 3 or something underground. Who knows what the actual speed is. But my brother-in-law will typically give me a kind of a grin and roll his eyes, and that's about it. So
Yeah.
he won't of that. But I say, hey, have you ever been underground on one of these maglev trains? I don't get any kind of answer from him. As far as the air
Oh.
stuff, the only thing interesting that I can remember from past Thanksgivings that he's talked about has been fuel sources. They can actually burn the oxygen and hydrogen, I don't even know what else, out of the air. So they don't need much like jet fuel, what we think of jet fuel as using to motor these crafts. They don't even need that. They have technology that can burn whatever's in the atmosphere to make them move. So that blew my mind too, because it's like, well, you think of jet fuel as being this heavy thing that they have to carry around, and he's confirmed that no, you don't need that. So that's all.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And that
yeah,
is incredible because then it's just endless amounts of fuel, of power. That's insane.
exactly. I don't know how long these crafts can fly, how fast they can go, and but if you don't need to constantly refuel, that means that they could be flying all over the place for a long period of time.
Oh, that is so cool. It makes you wonder because crafts that we have seen or that some people report that can fly as fast as the people have said they have seen them fly. And you go, how could a human being be inside of that? Right. But maybe it's
Right.
just some kind of another technology that, similar to what you just mentioned, this thing that they're figuring out, that there actually is someone in there. They're inside of a weird cocoon of this certain element, or who God knows what's going on up there.
That's a good way to put it. That's how I envision it too. And I have no idea how the science works, but a cocoon of some sort, because we've all seen the centrifugal force, the G forces
Yeah.
with people going round and round when they pass out. That's in a normal craft. And if these crafts are going beyond those speeds, double, triple, whatever, who knows how fast, beyond that, they would need some kind of padding, insulation, or cocoon, like you said, to keep them safe while piloting it. That makes sense.
Yeah, it'd be nice for those guys not to have to do that. What is that breathing exercise that they have to do called? I forget. There's a name for it. But it would be nice if they didn't have to worry about that. Passing out.
Right, exactly.
It looks very uncomfortable. And
Yes.
God bless anyone that, you're flying in one of those and then somebody actually does pass out. That's, I guess, where the autopilot comes in or the second pilot comes in. Like, holy crap, this is not good. That my breathing technique failed me. But the
Yeah.
pilots are amazing that we have. Okay. So now we're going to Western Colorado for your second encounter.
Okay, so this one I was at home for. I was looking out back into my backyard. Um, I remember kind of just revisiting the UFO phenomenon. I'd been watching a lot of movies. Again, stone cold sober though. I was looking out back. I think it was after prayer time. I am a Bible believer, and so I was praying, and I even included that in my prayer. God, please show me something of the spiritual world that we don't normally see, and that's why I think I saw it. But there was a massive. It reminded me of Independence Day, a huge saucer and low flying and no sound again. I couldn't tell if there was a glimmer or a light. I think there was along the perimeter. It was a faster experience though, so I probably only saw it for 3 or 4 seconds. It was still long enough to be like, oh my, I know what I'm looking at right now. And then having it disappear as well. It didn't zoom off. There wasn't any kinds of, I know how some people see saucers and they go zigzag and flying different ways. This was hovering over the town that I'm in and just poof disappeared. And it looked like it was kind of a cloudy night, but it was still before the sun had totally gone down. So it wasn't pitch black. Um, it was kind of dusk, I guess, time, and you could see the clouds in the sky, and there was either a shimmer or a light that I saw on this craft, but it kind of reminded me of Independence Day. It was like a grayish metallic looking saucer, and it was massive. It wasn't one of these small saucers that we see, pictures of and what other people have seen. I think there are a few reports of the large saucers, but this looked like some kind of, I call it a mothership, maybe a mothership saucer. And because I know how big it was, because it looked like it was covering the entire township. And I live in a small town, but it covered the entire like town area. And what was surprising to me was it's not flying south of town or north of town. It's going to fly right over town. Like someone else had to see this. I don't know how many people look up at the sky. I do all the time, but someone else in town had to have seen it. And again, when I went on, I did not report this one, but when I went online looking for someone maybe that reported it, I saw nothing about this in at that time. This was a couple years ago. I think 2024. It could have been 2023. Um, I used to be traveling a lot for my job in construction and drinking a lot. And so I'd be in town and be gone and whatever. I'd kind of forget the timeline. I think it was either end of 2023 or into 2024 at some point. So, but not drinking this night. I know I was just, like I said, I finished a prayer and I kind of looking out my window. I had my phone next to me. I do remember that, where I was like, oh, I wonder if I can get a picture of this. By the time I grabbed it, because I had eyes locked on it, I knew where my phone was. And so I reached for my phone. And then by the time I brought it up to like try to turn on the camera, it was already gone. So I was like, another one I can't get proof of.
So what you said in the very start of this one is again something that has come up in the past, and it a lot of times it can go and bleed into abduction experiences, right? Like people are saying there was an alien, a gray in my room, and I put that in air quotes for anyone not watching the video because that's just a blanket term. Any kind of a strange entity in your room, and they say, in Jesus' name, be gone.
Yep.
And then they will leave. Now, why in the world would an alien from whatever the hell planet, give it a name, wherever it's from, care that you called on Jesus to help you in that scary moment? So,
Yes.
for you to be asking in your prayer that you wanted to see something, it seems like that craft was just for you. Like maybe it wasn't even possible if the whole neighborhood is out there. You're going, do you see that? And they're all going to go, no.
I've heard of those experiences as well, where people in a group expect to see something. They've maybe seen something before, or, there's a bunch of believers that want to see something, and then it only appears to one person while they're all looking in the same direction. So I think that they do have cloaking technology. I do think from the few, I haven't researched this extensively, but it sounds like they can blend into things, whether that's a forest or clouds. I mean, literally going from cloud to cloud, looking like a cloud, and then it can appear as a craft and then look like a cloud again. So I think it's some kind of cloaking technology. And this one I don't think was government or military. I had a very strange kind of ominous feeling when I saw it too. I was like, ooh, that's not good, It was
Really?
kind of, it was overwhelming to where it was like, oh, thank you God for showing me this, but it was kind of like, ooh, that's something that I don't want to know about, or
Ooh.
I don't want to, be a part of, I guess. So I think you're right. Maybe part of the abduction experience, and I've heard that from other believers, that when you pray or to say Jesus's name, that these things can disappear. I think there is a link there. There is a pastor called Dan Duvall. I've listened to a few of his sermonettes. He's online as well and has a ministry. I think he's leagues above all of these other Christians. His last name is spelled Duval, Dan Duvall, and he has linked some of these things together. And he kind of just talks nonchalantly, like, "Yep, that's absolutely related. Yep, it's all spiritual warfare. Yep, that's this and this, aliens and the whether it's demonic activity or whatever. Some of these spirit beings that we can't see who do mess with people, and women have the stories about maybe even being impregnated and things like that, those types of weirdness. I guess it's all related, in my opinion. Now it is, after the research I've done. So I don't know what kind of technology they have, but I think that the spiritual realm sometimes turns physical, for whatever that means. Again, I don't know,
So
but
you do think that possibly we might be talking about the D word being demonic?
I do. Yep, I do. I think these aliens are maybe little robot types that are workers for the ones that have the true power. I believe I read the book of Enoch, and I believe in the fallen angels. I think that the fallen angels came down here and have shown us technology and worked with some people throughout, since they came down here, throughout mankind's history. So I think that some of this technology does exist. Most of us don't know anything about it. Most of us don't want to learn about it. We just say, no, be gone, dark side or whatever. But I think that dark side stuff, the aliens in those suits who have actually crashed, like let's talk Roswell just for a second. They actually found some kind of biological beings in these little, they looked a certain way. So it's a physical realm type of situation. They found a physical body or two. It was something, but I think that they don't have much power. They're more of like a little creation, like a robot would, what we would make as a robot. Maybe the true power, the fallen angels, maybe made these little beings to do that, to pilot these crafts. And so I think there is a link there. Again, I don't know necessarily how it's linked and who the true power is. I think Dan Duvall could actually speak to some of that. He just speaks so casually about it, like this is this and this is that, and doesn't everyone know this? And I'm always like, what? This is mind blowing.
Yeah, there was a guy on, Sean Ryan, just his very last guest, I believe. I don't even think I finished that yet, but he was basically saying that very same thing, that about the alien abduction scenario, and it's so strange that you could call upon Jesus and the whole horrible event ends. Now, they might try to come back again, but I don't see aliens from other planets giving a who about you bringing Jesus into the conversation. So, with you having that kind of a feeling about it, does that mean that you think that if you went out, now I understand that essentially a prayer is a request when you boil it down to its simplest form, it's a request, right? What if you just went outside and you started to do, like, maybe not a full CE5, like patting yourself and all of that, and their whole protocol, but have you ever thought, or maybe you don't because of how you felt at seeing this thing, but just saying, just straight out, like, I would like to see that again. Not an official prayer form, but just going out and having the intent to see another one. Or did the feeling that you got just put the kibosh on that whole thing and you're like, I'm good. I've seen a couple now. I'm straight.
That's a great question. And part of prayer, I think, is request, but part of prayer is also worship. So worshiping the creator, for however people see that in their minds when they pray. Part of it is, thanks and worship to the creator, but also sometimes requests saying, I need this, or I want this, please, if it be your will. So yes, there was a long stretch of time where I didn't want to see anything. And now I'm kind of back on that train where I've asked multiple times, and I think everything's on God's timeline. So
Yeah.
we're not going to just be shown, we don't just request something from God and it happens. That's not how it's ever worked for anyone. But I think that there is true power there, and on God's timeline, he will reveal some things. And so recently I have done exactly that. I've wanted to see something. The other night we had a blood red moon, and it was really bright here where I'm at in the western slope, not too many lights from town. And I was just kind of assuming more than anything that I would see something, and I didn't. But that was part of my prayer just recently, within the last week, was, God, please show me something from that other side, that spiritual realm. And I think that he does grant those types of access sometimes when we have a humble heart and when we're truly curious. I've always been a truth seeker. They used to call me Curious George. You remember the Curious George books?
Yeah.
As a kid, everyone called me Curious George. I was just always asking people questions about everything, and they'd be like, calm down, you'll find out sooner or later. But I was always a curious person and still am. So I'm that way in my prayers too. God, please reveal something to me that I know nothing about. And to answer your question, it's a great question. Yes, there are times that I do ask for that, and then there's times when more of my prayer is just worship, where it's kind of like I want to stay in my lane, and I'm not going to request too much from the God, the Creator.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that because your gut feeling was as it was, that you kind of go, all right, well, maybe, as you say, I like to use that term too, stay in my lane. Like, why poke and prod, right? Because in your email, you also have said that these are the two kind of bigger, more impactful sightings, but you have seen other strange lights in the sky. And I'm assuming you probably think, oh, it could have been a satellite or a weird plane or whatever. A lot of times those are really high up. I've seen that just something weird when we were out filming once, but it was so high up. I mean, it was much higher up than a plane even cruising altitude, and it was just a light in the sky, and yeah, it was moving really strangely, but there's a lot of stuff up in there in the sky that moves very strangely that is very, very normal. So do you think that all of those lights that you've seen plus these two experiences are tied in to each other for some purpose? Like, have you had, and I'm not asking you to go into these because it's not something that you reach out to me about, but have you had other paranormal experiences to where, because a lot of people think, not a lot of people, strike that, Shannon, I do too many blanket statements. Some people think that all of this stuff is connected, all of it, the ghosts, the Bigfoot, the UFOs, the demonic experiences. Have you had other experiences where you go, gosh, well, maybe I am kind of a flame and the moths take a look at me every once in a while?
That's a great question too. I do think that everything is related, even if we can't understand it. I've never had any paranormal experiences at all. I think that I've been in the middle of remote, wild places that have these stories. I've been to where Mothman and all of that weirdness has happened in West Virginia. I've traveled and had projects across the country. So I've been in some strange pockets, and I've been studying this for a long time. So sometimes I seek that out, but I think that I've been protected mainly and without, in a humble way. I think that God has protected me in some dangerous situations sometimes where other people might have an encounter, a strange encounter.
Mm,
I've always looked for Bigfoot. I've thought that those were interesting stories as a kid when I heard them. And I was always like, where's Bigfoot? They've got to be out here in Utah when I travel there, California or Colorado or whatever. And I've never seen anything. I've never had any paranormal. Going back to what we see as like satellites in the sky or whatever, that they look like they're stars. If you just glance up, it's like, okay, starry night. But if you stop and look for a
yeah.
second, these stars are moving. A lot of them are moving from time to time. And you're like, wait, what is that? That's not a planet. Obviously, planets don't move either. They move very slowly, and that's why their rotations change. But the star constellations are always the same. They're always set. So they look like stars, but they're actually moving, and you can see it. And especially when you're kind of glancing from side to side, looking at the ones that are set as constellations, and then just relax your eyes, you can see moving stars. And it's like, that's something that looks like a star and it's trying to blend in with the stars, but it's not a star. It looks super, I mean, it looks as high as the heavens, the
Yeah.
sky above. No idea if satellites can go that high, what our technology is now. I do believe, though, Eisenhower had that Greada Treaty in the 1950s, I believe, and that's what Phil Schneider talked about. They said, we'll give you technology if you give us human subjects to test on. And it was a partnership where we said, okay, yeah, you can take Americans, but we want technology for it. And I believe that some of this technology then is literally ours, but it's been given to us, man made. So there could be satellites up there that fly so high that they look like stars, but it is strange to see that kind of. I've seen shooting stars, but I've never seen a craft go from one end of the sky to others. And that's something I've always wondered about, because some stories are exactly that, where it's like, we thought it was a star, but it went like way fast across the entire sky, which
Yeah.
would be, who knows, hundreds of miles that you're seeing. And I've never seen anything like that. The ones that I see, most people, and I pointed them out to even friends or family when I'm standing around at night, they're like, oh yeah, that's a satellite. And it's like, are you sure? Everyone just dismisses it as a satellite, but I don't think so.
A lot of people do that. That's why it's so hard to talk about this stuff with the quote unquote normies. And hey, we love the normies. That's fine. The normies they have their own purposes too, because they can sometimes bring some of us get a little excited about certain things and everything's paranormal and everything's a UFO. Nope, it's not. We do need to calm down. Just all of us, not you and I.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
But once you really dig into that stuff, because there are apps that you can identify the ISS, or, certain satellites that are up in the sky and things like that. If there was somebody, let's take a human being in something like that, and as you say, and that does remind me a little bit of the light that I saw in West Virginia while we were filming. Actually, that was for Dark Sky. And the thing moved so quickly, and was doing kind of this weird, and we got it a tiny bit on camera, but not really. It was mostly our reactions, because we didn't have that kind of camera. You have to have some crazy lenses for that. Lenses that you take insurance out on, like big time insurance, like on your house. Anyhow, for a human being to be in something like that is moving in that way, and as you say, to go if it's that high and it goes across that much sky, is an incredible distance and an incredible speed. So then you go, well, yeah, could there be a person in there? I guess, but holy smokes, that would be some incredible technology. And there we go to the really weird stuff again. So Ben, does that mean that I know that you just tried that and thought about doing that recently, like, oh, I'm going to get back into this and maybe ask. So you're going to give it a break again and, kind of see if the mood strikes you, you might try again, or you think that out of respect, you're just like, let's stay back from it.
I'm curious again. These last couple of years, I would say I've been curious, and it isn't like a nightly type of thing that I think about and add into my prayer. Like, please show me something on the spiritual realm side. But it's just a feeling I get from time to time when God, I guess, kind of confirms that he's still in control, but some weirdness exists. And that's kind of, I get a feeling that I want to see this at certain times, and then I'll pray about it. And like I said, more often than not, I'm not seeing anything. God is, in my opinion, just saying, nope, it's not the right time for you to see this. But he has delivered in the past when I've said, even beyond the UFO stuff, God, please show me this or that. And it does happen. And so he's confirmed to me many times that he exists. But as far as the UFO, yes, I do. I want to study more of this. I'd like to see another craft in a non-ominous or weird feeling kind of way, just to witness it and see it. And I think everyone wants to get a picture, get a video. And so we ultimately just take our minds off of just watching it and studying it while we're seeing it, and hope to capture something. So it's almost smarter to have like a video already starting and then try to, ask for it to happen, I guess, if that makes sense. Or maybe it's not supposed to be captured on film too. I know a lot of people say that it's just not supposed to be captured on film, or won't be. They say their camera malfunctions. They were ready to go, and they had their batteries charged and the batteries die, and that's again the paranormal side, or the woo-woo side, the weird side, I call it, is tied to the UFO, and the craft side, the military side, I think are working together. That Val Valiant Thor, or whomever they talked about in the Pentagon, a book was written about, Phil Schneider talked about. Phil talked about some of these things too, that they're not going to allow you to capture some of this stuff. It just won't happen. Your technology will fail. So maybe with our eyes, and we're computers ourselves, we're biologic computers. God created us in a tremendous way. The things that we can remember, and the things that we can recall, and the things that we can see with our eyes, and how it computes in our brain. I mean, I think that maybe that is where it's supposed to end on some of these things. We're not all them on film for whatever reason. I've heard too many stories where people are like, I was there, I was ready, I was going to capture it, and then couldn't. So, and me either. I've tried a couple of times, I guess, but it hasn't happened.
I think you're spot on with that. I think if you set a camera up, and it could just be your phone, it could be a Sony, it could be some bad to the bone camera, it doesn't matter. I think if you set it up and you had all the intent, that 110% of the intent in a request or a prayer, however you want to label that, I think that you're right. I don't know that would even happen because of that fact. Because over and over again, I've heard encounters like that. Or they go, as you say, they lift it up and poof, it's gone. Bye-bye.
Yep, absolutely.
And in fact, I've heard encounters where the person is just thinking of getting the camera out, and to where this wasn't a fleeting experience, this craft or whatever it was, UFO, had already been out for some time, could be minutes, could be 20 minutes. And then the second they're like, oh, I need to get this on, boop, there it goes. Right? So, what does that mean? What is that about? There is where it gets really, really deep. The same as with you having that intent and putting that prayer out there and then seeing this craft. And then the fact that you already answered the 101 question is, well, was it reported by anybody else? Now, that just means that maybe a person didn't make a report, just like that older gentleman actually did. But I would hazard to say, it sounds like this one was just for you. So that's where it gets really super weird and interesting. You're kind of going, well, so that's tied into our consciousness somehow.
I agree. Yes, the technology is not just speeding crafts, because that's one thing to talk about speed. I love speed and recording, some of those things, whether it's a car or a plane. I've seen the Blue Angels fly, and again, with my brother-in-law being aeronautical, I've done trips to San Diego, and I've seen some crazy aircraft, which is awesome. But a lot of that, you just think, well, they're going to speed off, or this craft has some kind of capability to go faster than what we've been told the normal population. And again, a lot of people, the scientists, a lot of them will just go back to the numbers and say, well, those numbers don't exist, when they know that they do. They have some capabilities of speeding. But I think some of these things are cloak, where it literally can blend in to the sky, the clouds, the mountains themselves. I've talked to a couple longtime locals who said, I saw something weird that just looked like it went into the mountain. And I was like, well, door opening kind of thing? And they're like, no, just like disappeared into the face of a mountain. And you're like, what? So I think they can cloak themselves. It's some kind of, again, technology we don't understand. So these things can do all kinds of things beyond maneuverability and flying at weird directions and turning on a dime and flying real fast.
Yeah, because once you get into that aspect of it, you're going, well, okay, if that's a person inside of even a back engineered alien craft, how did it know it was going to get my camera out?
Right.
How
Exactly.
is that? I've heard that so many times. And that part of it is just so fascinating to me, because I do think that a lot of what is seen in the sky is ours. We need to have secrets about things like that. I get it. But you start talking about that other side of it, something else is going on there. Well, Ben, I hope that if you do see another craft in this way, that you don't get that weird feeling, because that's a gut feeling that you don't want. And you go, ooh, that was icky. Playing with fire, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. It was
But
overwhelming. I'm not an emotional guy, but that one made me like slightly emotional, where it was just like, oh, that's too much or something, where I didn't need to be a part of whatever was happening, but I did witness it.
was part of it being overwhelming because of the fact that it happened after you asked?
Probably so, to where it was almost like, wow, God's literally listening to everything at all times. It was that confirmation again. And I've already known that, but it was like, wow. I mean, all I could say is thank you, God, for showing me what I've asked for, even though it was heavy.
Yeah, that is so cool. That is so very cool. Yeah, I do hope that if you see another one, you don't have that feeling again. But if you
Yeah.
do, I would love to hear about it. Just, I mean, it could be just between us. I would love to keep in touch. And if you do see anything else, I'd love to know about it.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I love your podcast. And I think lastly, what one guest on your podcast had said is absolutely right. We're 9 to 5 people in this society. Most people are just worried about work and what are we going to have for dinner, and then rinse and repeat. And they're not thinking about the bigger things. They don't have the time either to research some of these things. I've been blessed in between projects where I had spans of downtime, and I've read and researched things that people probably haven't. And so I think that that's part of it, being aware of some of these things, and having downtime is truly a blessing as well. In whatever people do for work, having downtime is a true benefit, and being able to read and research these things and know what's going on a little bit around us is a blessing, in my opinion. But I think that your guest recently had said that most people are too distracted. We have too many distractions, from work to the family to what are we doing for our next holiday to, and we're not looking up at the sky and asking the bigger questions. So I think that that's part of it. Some people have had lots of sightings, and it's like, why is that? Why do the same people keep winning the lottery? I don't know, but it does happen. People that investigate these things do end up finding something because they're putting their energy there and their
Yeah.
time and their will into it. And other people just are can't. The normal 9 to 5 people can't. We're too distracted, working, trying to make money. So
And always looking down at those darn phones. I'm
yeah,
very guilty of that myself. So that is understandable. Yeah, but Ben, thank you so much for being willing to come on and share.
absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and having me. I appreciate it. It feels good just to tell someone else, about it. Besides the couple of friends and family, I've never been interviewed about it at all. So it actually, I was looking forward to this. So thank you for having me too.
Oh, thank you. So, okay, so last question then. You've told friends and family, then has anybody said, oh, that's weird, I saw such and such? Not that you have to go into their whole thing, but sometimes it takes that first step and then somebody goes, oh, yeah, I had something weird too.
Never, not
Mm,
one of my, and I have a very small family, so there's only a handful of us. And my friend group, same thing, small group of friends, and even coworkers. I'll mention it. I'm pretty blunt and honest with most
yeah.
people. Like, you never know what, or never guess what I saw last night. I've said that to workers, coworkers and stuff, friends, family, but small group. No one has ever said, "Wow, yeah, me too." They literally just kind of eye roll and move on. They'll
Mm.
change the subject right away.
Oh, they
So, what
changed
are
the
you doing for
subject.
lunch? A lot of
Oh,
times they'll
making
just
them uncomfortable. That's my territory.
absolutely. I feel like even if someone has seen something, they don't want to talk about it. But
No.
most people really just think it's it's craziness, I guess. I
Yeah.
mean, the supernatural realm, and it doesn't exist. You might be a little crazy, or I don't know. And it's weird because it's 2026. I could see that in the 1980s or 90s or 20 years ago, still being like, no, that doesn't exist. Let's talk about something else. But even recently, I mean, still people are just like, yeah, right, okay, whatever, buddy. So I don't know. They don't want to listen to it, or it makes them uncomfortable, or
Yeah, I don't get that either because there is still so much taboo connected with this stuff. It's still you get that, oh, look at, you're flying your freak flag again. You're talking about Bigfoot and UFOs. Like, yep, I am.
absolutely. I've literally had people say, "What are you looking at?" Because some days I'll just be looking up at the sky, and I'm like, "I'm looking for craft. I'm looking for something weird." They're like, well, there's stuff that flies around up there that we don't know about. You haven't heard?" And people are like, "No." So,
I have to say, because I've said this so many times, because everyone's like, oh, you're in Vegas. So you're near Area 51. You must see weird stuff in the sky all the time. I'm like, nope. But I have to say, I've never tried to just really, and I've not either in any way, shape, or form tried to meditate. I'm terrible at things like that, just quieting my brain. But I've never actually tried to, put the intent out there, put the request out into the ether, and go outside and say, gosh, gee, it would be so amazing to see a craft. And yeah, I'm in the middle of the city and there's terrible light pollution. But if a mothership went over and blocked the sky, I would be able to tell there was something there. So maybe I just need to be open enough to give that a shot.
yep, absolutely. I do agree in that there's truth there in the Bible, but the spiritual versus the physical life. The spiritual is just something we can't see, but it exists, in my opinion. So I think that the confirmations that I've had have just been that, like that simple. There is a spiritual realm that does exist, and we have to acknowledge it, but we just can't see it. So a lot of times seeing is believing, people say, but there are things that happen every single day that we just can't see. So I would say, yeah, try that at some point. I would even pray with you at some point if you wanted to, and just see if that's a possibility as far as seeing something together.
That would be cool. That is a cool experiment. I like that idea. Oh, hell yeah. Okay, I like that. Yes, we will try that. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. It's like amplifying the speaker, right?
Yeah, absolutely,
I definitely need that because I'm about as sensitive as a rock. So, yeah. Well, Ben, thank you so much for sharing these very cool sightings. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Appreciate your time, Shannon. Thanks for having me on.